So this is the Scruton podcast about the Scruton Seminar here at Budapest, and one of the lecturers of the Scruton Seminar is Andy Hamilton, who is a philosopher of music, let's say, and speaks about the aesthetics of music by Roger Scruton. What are the Scruton's thoughts on the philosophy of music? So. What do you think? Why is it so important for you, the aesthetics of Scruton, who was, although he started out as an aesthetician, but later became more like a political philosopher. So he's well known more from that profile, not as a music philosopher.
You're right about that. Well, I do aesthetics in general, but it's easy to get typecast, like for an actor. You know, I mean, I don't just do music, but I specialised in music, I suppose. And I wrote a long review of Roger Scruton's book, The Aesthetics of Music, when it appeared. And that was the first time I'd really engaged with his thought, which was in the late 90s. And I thought this was really an impressive book. And I mean, I think it's still the greatest book on aesthetics of music in this century in the analytic tradition. I mean, I think there are other
It's a strong statement.
Yes. Well, I'm just thinking now, is that right? I think so. I mean, you know, I'm a fan also of Adorno's aesthetic theory, which Roger Scruton wouldn't like. And I think that's a very important book, but it's not just on music, but it's predominantly, I suppose, on music. Yes, I suppose I think that's, I mean, you know, if somebody threw a title, no, I'd be surprised if there's any, well, put it this way, I don't think there's anything better. There might be some other things. But you see, music, aesthetics is a Cinderella subject, and I think that may be a quote from Roger Scruton, right? Within Anglophone philosophy, that is English-speaking philosophy, it's a Cinderella subject. It didn't really get much attention till the 20th century, unlike other areas of philosophy in Anglophone, thought. It's true that Kant, fortunately, thank goodness, Kant wrote The Critique of Judgment, which is the greatest work of aesthetics. And Hume was going to write, one of the books of the Treatise of Human Nature was going to be on aesthetics. But the books that were published, they sold so few that he got discouraged and he gave up, which is a tragedy. You know, so there could have been another book as great as, or almost as great as Kant's, but it never appeared. And so what we got from Hume are some essays, and I mean the essay of The Standard of Taste has had a huge amount of attention. So think what the attention a book would have had, you know. So, you know, in aesthetics, I think you're really struggling to find great works that you do find in other areas of philosophy. And aesthetics of music struck me as, I would think a great work. I mean, and it's a mature work because his first book on architecture, which I think was his PhD, I mean, that's an early work. I mean, it's very good, but he hadn't, you know, he's very young when he wrote that. Whereas aesthetics of music is his mature statement. I mean, there were some other things that he wrote, but that, I would have thought that was his greatest work in aesthetics, probably. And as I say, one of the great works of aesthetics in analytic philosophy.
Would you a little bit introduce us in a shortly? What are the main statements of Scruton, and what is the main meaning of his works?
Do you mean aesthetics of music or general?
Yeah, of course.
Well, I mean, I think also because I'm here speaking about in Budapest, speaking about aesthetics of music, but you can't understand his thought about aesthetics without understanding the rest of his philosophy. And you've got to understand something about his political philosophy. And in particular, I'm interested in the notion of tradition, which I'm working on at the moment. And I'll be working on that before I give my paper, because I haven't finished it yet. Unfortunately, it's on Friday, so the last day. But just to sum up the book, Aesthetics of Music, I mean, it is a very cleverly constructed piece of work, because a lot of the time I think Scruton wrote, I mean, he was a journalist and he made his living partly from journalism, really. And so he could write very quickly, but I don't think Aesthetics of Music was written as, was written quickly. It's well, I suppose you've got the same problem with Dickens, haven't you? I mean, the novels would have been greater if he hadn't been under the publishing deadline. But, sometimes you think, no, I mean, he had enough time to write that book, and it begins with physics and it ends with culture. So it does the complete spectrum of philosophy of music, from acoustics to philosophy of culture and society. And that is, again, that's unusual, actually. I mean, if you look at Adorno, then you've got the social philosophy of a Marxist kind. And actually, I think there are interesting connections between Scruton and Adorno, actually, although I don't think he'd be particularly happy to be told that. But you haven't got much on acoustics, or, whereas Scruton, he is a philosopher who had a very wide range. And so he could do metaphysics, philosophy of mind, theory of perception that you need to understand acoustics. And obviously he's a social commentator, political philosopher. I mean, I think not only is it probably his best, his greatest book in aesthetics, maybe it's his best book altogether, I don't know. I mean, I haven't read, he writes an awful lot. I haven't read, I've only read a fraction, but I would think, you see, there's a lot, what you find with Roger Scruton, this is, again, some philosophers do this, that they may repeat their ideas, but he wrote so much that there is, a considerable repetition, but it's always good to see how he puts things in different words and different terms. And sometimes it's more rushed, but other times, as in Aesthetics of Music and the architecture book and some other cases, it definitely was, worked on. And but he had the ability to write well. I think he's one of those people I would say talk in paragraphs, right? I mean, some people just talk and it comes out fairly randomly and not particularly well organized, but he could just do that. And he's a very impressive philosophical speaker. So I think that his reputation in philosophy, it's in philosophy that he has the highest reputation. And my colleagues in other subjects like, English, literary studies or history, or they haven't read the philosophy, and so they think Scruton is a polemicist. And he was a polemicist, but he was also a serious thinker. And if you went to his philosophical presentations, you would see that this man is a serious thinker who is not grandstanding or, uttering polemic. He's interested in working out the truth of the issue. So he's an honest... He often was an honest seeker after truth. Perhaps not always, but... but you wanted me to sum up the ideas, so I haven't really done that. So anyway, I say it's got this kind of...
Backmuziek, his ideas about music.
Yeah, he's got this range from... so he covers the whole range of issues in aesthetics of music. I mean, I wrote a book on aesthetics of music, but it wasn't as long as his, and it was not possible to cover all issues. But I mean, almost everything is covered. So if you're thinking about acoustics and the physical basis of music, then there's a discussion of that. There's a discussion of issues like musical meaning, music and the emotions, musical ontology, the nature of the musical work, and then more into the kind of issues that Adorno was also interested in, which is music and society, and the notion of autonomous music versus commodified music, although, you know, all music is commodified to some extent. So there's a huge range, and it's got musical examples, and apparently, you know, publishers will say, well, if you've got music, if you put musical examples in there, you lose, you know, half the audience. It's a bit like if you have footnotes, you lose. And so he will have lost, because of those musical examples, a lot of people go into a bookshop, open it and say, oh, God, there's music. I can't read that. I don't want, you know. But, you know, so I don't suppose it's sold as much as some other books, but I think it's an extremely impressive achievement. And one of the things he discusses is what I call the acousmatic thesis, which is the idea that music, when we experience music, we experience it as divorced from the world, the physical world. And he thinks this is very important, and I agree with him that it is very important, but I don't really totally agree that he justifies it. And so we had a sort of a debate in print about this, and I'm not convinced that he's kind of settled that issue. But that's a major philosophical issue. But I said enough about that. It's got a tremendous range. It's hard to think of an issue in the philosophy of music that isn't covered in that book. That's what I would say. Yeah.
And the last question is you are here for the Scruton Seminar, so why is it important? And what about Budapest?
What
about Budapest?
Well, I have never been to Budapest before, and I've long wanted to come here, and I've been here now since, well, it's like this is the third day. It seems to be an amazing city. You know, well, obviously a week is not nearly long enough, especially to, you know, if you have a conference.
Have you had time for?
Well, I've walked around a bit, and I've got the weekend to walk around a bit more. But no, it's quite an amazing place, and the seminar seems to be a very worthwhile project because it reflects Roger Scruton's interest in, you know, part of what I said. He's a serious thinker, and he's a serious teacher, and so it reflects because there are, you know, students here too. It reflects that as well. So I think it's a laudable event. Yeah.
Thank you very much for your time.
Okay. Thank you.